It's the ERP Confab. I'm David Essex, Industry Editor at TechTarget's ERP website. Environmental sustainability initiatives can be ambitious undertakings that call for a complex melding of people, process, and technology. ERP is often at the center of the IT component, but isn't it mostly for ESG compliance reporting? How can you use enterprise applications to get more control over resources, actually reduce carbon footprints, and effect real change, and not just report it? Companies increasingly turn to system integrators and consultancies for help, and ERP vendors are partnering with them to try to make it happen. One example, EY, the professional services and Big Four accounting firm, which works with SAP to help companies implement sustainability through their SAP systems. My guest, Marcia Reppy, is the America's Consulting Leader for EY's sustainability practice. She explains the ERP sustainability connection, the progress she's seeing from EY clients, and the technical work that still needs to be done. We spoke shortly after the SAP Sapphire conference earlier this year. It might be good to start with, if you could explain to me what the partnership is with SAP and whether any of this was new, either announced at Sapphire or has recently been added to or changed.
Outside of sustainability, we just as broader AY have a strategic alliance with SAP. They're one of our largest partners globally. So we work very closely with them across their entire portfolio and ecosystem. So, as you know, they have hundreds of products in the umbrella. So we do everything from large scale business transformation enabled by S4 down to particular product implementation across all of our service lines, including tax, for example. So we've been in that relationship for a long time, essentially right after we sold off our Capgemini business many years ago and then started rebuilding our advisory capabilities. SAP was one of the first alliances that we have focused on. We are SAP's, and I don't have the most recent numbers, but the last time I checked, we're SAP's fourth largest partner. From sustainability standpoint, we have really began to focus on the intersection of sustainability and that alliance, I would say probably 3 to 4 years ago. And that's kind of when, everyone pretty much started, the topic started blowing up in general. So we very quickly aligned with SAP's executive leadership and started working through on what does that mean really? Like, what does sustainability mean to our clients? What are the meaningful solutions that we could do? So today we focus, I would say, on 3 buckets. One is embedding sustainability into our clients' business transformations enabled by S4. And that's one of the projects that I'm leading right now for a $55 billion consumer products organization where they're on an S4 journey. And as part of that, they're embedding sustainability into their business process. So not kind of what I would call vertical sustainability, so the chief sustainability officer arena, but how does sustainability impact supply chain, procurement, finance, sales, and really focusing on embedding that in the upstream. So that's kind of one bucket. The second bucket is our partnership is really focused around SAP sustainability product portfolio, which contains, I think, about 9 or 10 solutions, give or take, depending on how you count. So we're really focused on helping being their partner, just like we are for many other of their solutions, and implementing that. So, and those solutions are pretty broad. So some are really focused on sort of your traditional environmental engineering capabilities enablement, like emission management, things like that. So we have a digital team that focuses on that. Some are more focused on tax. So like responsible design and production is really plastics and packaging tax solutions. So our tax folks focus on that, and some kind of fall in the broader consulting space. So that's the second bucket. And the third bucket, we have some IP-based assets that are built on SAP technology. So a really good example of that is we extensively use SAP BTP platform, if you're familiar with that. They're a business technology platform to build apps both for us and our clients. So we focus on, essentially leveraging that platform through our partnership and creating unique assets. Intelligent Insights is an example of that. It has components of sustainability embedded into analytics solutions across different business processes.
This is maybe getting a little granular, but you mentioned the SAP products that they have that are in the sustainability. And the one we hear about the most, I think, and I've seen on the EY site also, is the sustainability control tower. But then there's also the Green Ledger. These have been announced over the last 3-4 years, and some of them I think are coming along more recently. How are people using these SAP-made sustainability products that they've been really touting the last several years? How are they really using them? Is it mostly for reporting, or are they using them more to also do like what you mentioned the consulting wing does, which is to really affect the actual sustainability of a company and not just how it's reported?
Really good question. So maybe let me answer it this way. I think, and you probably know this because you've been in the tech market for so many years. So in general, the tech market is very much emerging in this space. So, we're all trying to figure out what needs to be done and how do you solve some of these problems. And the tech vendors are trying to figure out what solutions would be helpful for the clients, for their customers, and develop content around that, everything, from IP down to the actual technology. So I think that's really important to understand because and this is Marsha's assessment, not analysts' assessment, without any kind of, quantitative basis. But generally speaking, we're definitely in the beginning stage of the tech vendor maturity market. So there's a lot of different things out there. They're in the early stages, and there might be one or twosies out there that I would say are like 7 out of 10 in terms of maturity of the solution and the functionality that it provides to solve a particular problem. But the vast majority of the products, I would say, are in the 4s and 5s category, if that. So with that, the understanding of the product development roadmap is really important because, and that's the case with SAP too, a lot of it, we know that these products are going to continue to change, and we know that they will dramatically change in some cases. So one of the things that we are focused through our partnership with SAP is to be really close to their product development team in Waldorf and to truly understand what's coming. Because right now we do have some clients that are implementing their products, and I'll give you a couple of examples, but it's more, generally speaking, we know we're not going to get everything. Our customers know they're not going to get, it's not an easy button that they can implement and all of their problems are solved. So it's really more, how can I take the step in the right direction, knowing that the product development roadmap has additional functionality planned for the future that will get me into a better place. So that road mapping is happening. So kind of general comments. So then to your more specifically answer your question, we do implement pretty much all of their SAP sustainability product portfolio products. I think generally what we're seeing is, I would put it into 3 buckets. Bucket number 1, we have customers who are relatively mature in their sustainability journeys. They've been at it for a while. It was something that they've been working on internally. There was a lot of focus and the necessary budgetary support. So as a result, they have developed solutions, custom solutions that they have. And it's usually a combination of some, assets, widgets, as well as just processes around that. In many cases, a lot of manual activities. So that's kind of one bucket. So for those clients, the biggest conversation right now when it comes to SAP sustainability product portfolio, if I'm happy with the widget that I have, what does this SAP product gets me? And a lot of the conversations in those spaces, and the general IT stance, right? Sometimes you need to take 2 steps back in order to take a leap forward. Not everyone's on board with that when it comes to sustainability, because we really like our widgets. So that's kind of one bucket. The second bucket is we have clients that don't have anything. It's very manually driven, or it's like in Excel, everyone's favorite tool. So, so for them, like really any improvement is significant. So there the conversations are, hey, this functionality exists. It's a, solid solution to get you started. It fits into your broader ecosystem and IT strategy. And then there is a third bucket that I would say is really focused on long-term strategic vision. So they're really approaching it like, what is our North Star? It's a small bucket, David, for full transparency, but there's a few clients in there. What is our North Star? What do we want to be 3 to 5 years from now? And what does this journey look like? So we work with all three. And some of our implementations, like Sustainability Control Tower, are very, it's very pain point, what I would say, pain point in implementation. I have this one particular problem, come and fix it. It's a kind of a quick implementation, get in, get out. We, implement the easy button to make their life easier. In the first bucket, it's really, sometimes it is really more conversations around the value realization of how scaling within SAP system in your ecosystem would be beneficial in terms of replacing some of the widgets that have been custom built. And the third conversation, selfishly, is what we really want, because that allows us to really build a strategic roadmap leveraging their entire technology footprint. The other comment I'll say, and respectfully to SAP and all of our other technology partners, and to my comment on the maturity of the solutions, some of the solutions, because they're not quite as mature, they're not landing with customers. They want to wait until it is, they don't want to spend a tremendous amount of money to put something that only gets them 5 out of the 10 there. They want to wait until it's a 7 or 8. So many are kind of doing interim solutions and, band-aids until that's ready.
I've noticed that EY often uses the phrase value-led sustainability. I know in the broader consulting part of the company, that could include all sorts of things that are not that related to IT. But if you could answer this, and mostly, if possible, in the context of the IT-specific aspects of what value-led sustainability is, and maybe how that differs from other sustainability approaches. Because the fact that you say value-led tells me that there's some, as usual at EY, there's a lot of thought behind what that phrase really means.
I'm glad you think that. Thank you. Try. So I think when it comes to value add from an IT lens, and I like my buckets, so I'll put things into buckets again. So I would say, again, probably 3 things come to mind. So first, which is most of the conversations that we're having with the CIOs and CDOs today, is really around how does this fit within my IT strategy, within the ecosystem of my existing partners, with what I am trying to do from a solution architecture standpoint overall. And there is a tremendous value conversation there, because as you know, generally speaking, when you talk to the business folks, they're very much focused on solving the pain point at that point in time. So as a result, many times our customers end up with a whack-a-mole of solutions that don't really scale, are all over the place. There's no clear ownership, and it's just really difficult and expensive for IT to manage. So I think that is definitely a big conversation that we've been having, is making sure that the same approach and methodology that you would use for evaluating any solution and how it supports your broader organizational strategy, and including IT strategy, is very valid. So I think that's one. So a lot of folks are focused on that on the IT side. I think the second piece, there's the pure play IT sustainability value, right? So green IT. So what do I need to do as a CIO as I run my IT centers and my IT organization? How can I be more green? How can I help with that, right? And that's a combination of, things that you would expect, like migration to the cloud, as well as just figuring out how do you green everything, down to travel for your teams, things like that. So that's definitely, a very direct piece. And then the third one, from a value standpoint, all IT folks, I think the vast majority would agree, most of them exist in the service of their business partners. So I think what is the value proposition that they can align to support their business partners and make sure that they're meeting their goals. That is probably the biggest conversations we have. Again, you know this, right? Like, we no longer have verticals in IT. It's really hard. Everything is converging and it's like this gigantic scrambled egg of things.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's becoming increasingly difficult to manage that. I think the other piece too is, with things like analytics and now AI and Gen AI and a lot of the emerging tech, digital twins, and, I'm not going to call blockchain emergent, but like a lot of, some of the elements of that, there are things in there that they need to figure out in order to be able to provide value to their customers. So I think that's probably, I would say, if I had to rank those three, that's probably the most meaningful, impactful conversations and concerns that they have. How do they support their customers? And then I think the other two are probably tied. There's definitely that sort of, efficiency, strategic alignment. How does this all tie together play? And of course, how do I make my own function more green? I mean, that's there for sure.
What would you say are the, I presume, integrations, literal IT integrations, and maybe other missing pieces that are needed so IT itself, broadly defined, can fulfill not only the reporting needs, but actually be a tool for improving sustainability? Because it seems like we've heard about a lot of things. We've heard about Internet of Things, there's sensors, there's all sorts of ways. Building controls are going on already now, and that's an IT thing, really. Smart cities, it's just so complex, but yet one also gets the sense that there's probably a disconnect still between like the ERP system and some of the other enterprise applications, and then all these other amazing things that could be used to improve sustainability, like through better resource use and control. So where does the most work need to be done, do you think?
Can yes be the answer? I think across everything. So they're just pragmatically trying to think through this. I mean, there's definitely room for improvement across the board. I ultimately believe that before you can improve something, you need to measure it, right? Like
Mhm.
the old school analytics thinking. Before we want to improve something, but I need to know where I am today and I need to know how to measure it and and how do I improve it or reduce it or whatever the right direction is.
Mhm.
So I think right now, because of the maturity of where we're at, because we're still trying to figure out so many things, right? The regulatory environment is changing like weekly. Nothing is standardized. There's local regulations that are popping up all over the place. So there's just a sheer amount of complexity involved. So I would say we all want to do cool, sexy things. But the reality is, we really need to focus in this space and getting the foundations right. And for the vast majority of our clients, and there is some sector specific elements there, but for the vast majority of our clients, the biggest problem in sustainability is related to data. You don't have the data, you cannot get the data, you don't understand the data, you don't know what to do with the data. Again, boring stuff in a way,
Mhm.
right? But that data foundation is really important. And until you put that in place, can't really measure anything. So I
Mhm.
think that's really critical. Simultaneously, and this is probably where the sector angle comes in. So if you're dealing with heavy machinery, oil and gas, just heavy asset type
Mhm.
industries, energy in general, because of energy transition topic, is that's such a big, business problem for them. It's sustainability also, but it's changing the core of their operations and, certainly has a tremendous impact on their future. So in those areas, government is another one where it's really, infrastructure focused in many cases. In those situations, we do see more of a driver towards sort of that pure play sustainability technology, things that directly change something. You improve your manufacturing, you start innovating on how you create products to minimize your carbon footprint. You start figuring out what are your new business models are for some of your waste. So you're not just disposing of it, but you're selling it to somebody. So those things are definitely have big play, right? And probably the biggest example of that is the carbon capture that is, again, energy and advanced manufacturing mobility is really focused on, as well as agribusiness. And I
Mhm.
think in those situations, the technologies that truly do capture carbon, those are really
Mhm.
important. So I would say it's those two topics. To your point, and things like not being connected,
Mhm.
totally, right? Like it's kind of like that common when we before sustainability, when we talked about sales and when we talked about front office marrying up to the back office,
Mhm.
that was a conversation for many years. It's the same concept. We have like, hey, I need to capture carbon, I need to lower my emissions, I need to be more circular. Like I have all of these real things that I want to do. And then it's like the back end, well, you got to balance it out. So
Yeah.
I think it's the same interplay between the two that we're going to see, and we need to focus on both. But if you look for the biggest impact, which again is going to be energy, advanced manufacturing, mobility, and GPS
Mhm.
sectors, it's hard to bypass those big topics like energy transition. That tech is incredibly important, and it
Yeah.
needs to continue to advance at a rapid pace.
Scope 3, that has always seemed like one of the biggest problems that companies are aware of, and it just seems huge in terms of data. You mentioned data, maybe integration needed to get the data. So how much are you hearing that from clients and helping them to deal with their Scope 3 requirements?
Big for discrete manufacturing, and consumer products, and now life sciences for sure. So, the project that I mentioned to you, that is actually an SAP S4 transformation. So, carbon by SKU is one of the biggest goals for the program. So, being able to figure out how can you capture country of harvest, which is what drives your emission calculations, and I'm simplifying, and trace it through your entire value chain, right? From the time that I buy the product to when I produce raw materials, then when I produce my product, and then when I ship it to my customer, being able to calculate it at a SKU level in consumer products and life sciences is big. So it's definitely happening in the US, David, with our situation of being where sustainability is a very political issue. It's not moving as fast, I would say, as we're seeing elsewhere, but it's moving. And this year, and again, anecdotally from my experiences and what we're seeing in the market, more conversations around that, more conversations around supply chain transparency, traceability, following all of that. So definitely big from scope 3, and figuring out how to embed it into your systems, into your process, so you don't, you have one cohesive business process enabled
Mhm.
by tech, as opposed to you hanging out and doing something on the sidelines in Excel, which is,
Right.
suboptimal.
I feel like I've seen greater awareness that IT itself can be the problem or can add to the problem in a big way. The blockchain data centers were the ones that got a lot of publicity with not just energy, but water,
Mm.
land, even. Same thing is now happening with generative AI. Is this something you hear much from EY clients? And if so, how are you trying to help them address that issue?
The topic is definitely coming up, right? It really comes up through sort of like the ethical considerations and the societal impact lens. Like we need to be careful about that. So definitely is coming up. For us, it's really tied to our green IT solution, which includes, so green IT, not like a huge fan of the name, but it's easy to understand.
Mhm.
But a big portion of that is moved to the cloud, right? Great. But the problem is you're just passing the problem to somebody else. If I outsource my stuff and I move it to the cloud, someone still maintains those data centers, and the issues that you manage with water, with electricity, all of that still, still valid, and I'm still responsible for it. So I think organizations are definitely trying to figure out how to manage it across the entire value chain. So, and how to understand where they still have the responsibility for it. It's tied to our green IT solution. But I also think like there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. And like to your question about some of those tech that can help, right? Like that is one area where I think we will have no choice but to hopefully see some innovation in the future on how data centers, because that stuff's not going away. Quantum's gonna at some point hit, and that will be like
Mhm.
huge suck of resources in addition to AI and everything else. But how do you manage that, right? And I was reading this article a couple of weeks ago about data centers moving to like cold regions, and being creatively put in the
Mm.
oceans and things like that, and they're using
Yeah.
heat for that. Like that's the kind of stuff that's needed, because the solutions today will not be able to keep up with demand. But is it solved? Yeah, no. I mean, I think it's just kind of coming up, and and we're all just starting to understand that all of this new cool tech like AI is going to have a negative impact that we will have to
Right.
deal with. So we need to solve for that.
Hmm.
We're internally, and I was on the call with our sustainability vice chair this morning. That's one of the things that's big on the agenda. How do we internally live what we preach to our clients?
Hmm.
And that's one of the biggest issues, right? Because for us, as don't produce anything. It's our people flying around and our people and all of our tech that's supporting, engagements all over the place. So data centers is a hot topic, operations is a hot topic, security
Right.
is a hot topic. So I think that's going to be a big focus over the next several years, is to really figure out how to do it in an ethical way so you don't just pass it on to somebody else and punt the ball down the road.